All right, everyone. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Geekdom Report. That's what I've decided to call my reviews. I decided that after I had recorded episode one of House of the Dragon, so I didn't actually say that in the video. And then as I was uploading it to YouTube, and that's what I decided to call it. So today we're reviewing a show that, frankly, I never thought I would have ever watched. Pretty Little Liars Original Sin. Just to kind of give some context to that, I've never seen the original show. I knew of it, but I didn't know anything about it. And so you hear about a show called Pretty Little Liars, and you just assume it's going to be, some high school teenage girl drama type of a thing. So I just never gave it a second thought. But then on HBO, I was scrolling through stuff, and the one of the big, I don't know, like banners or cards for it or whatever popped up, and it looked kind of like horror-y. And so I looked it up and saw it was actually rated TVMA, which I'm like, wow, that'd be pretty intense for just like a high school drama. So I looked into it and then found out what it's actually about. So if you are unfamiliar with either of the series, it's about a group of high school girls, and they're being tormented, for lack of a better word, by a mysterious killer called A. And so it's about them uncovering some horrific truths and being stalked by this serial killer and everything. And so I still have never seen the original show, so I don't know how well this ties in slash I'm pretty sure this is considered a reboot, so I don't know if it's considered a good reboot among fans of the original. So you will be getting the viewpoint of someone who has not seen the original. I just came in completely fresh and didn't know much about it. So this is one of those shows where if I wanted to sit down and list out all of my problems with it, I could just write and write and write and come up with hundreds of bullet points of problems and things that annoyed me and things that I feel like could be considered plot holes or continuity errors and things like that. But at the end of the day, it held my attention, and I kept wanting to know what was going to happen next. And I think that makes it kind of a win. Despite all the problems I had with it, when an episode would end, I'd want to start the next one because I wanted to know where the story was going to go. I wanted to know what. So while they're being simultaneously taunted by A, there's also a mystery involving the main group of girls and their moms. And so that mystery of what happened with their moms is also kind of a core story element of this reboot. And I wanted to know what was going to happen. So, at the end of the day, I feel like that, I don't want to say that's all that matters because that's not true. But this would be a very easy show to look at all of the really stupid things and just be like, oh, that's dumb, and not want to watch it. And if that's how you ended up, that is 100% valid. That's entirely your opinion. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying that there is a lot of entertainment to be found watching this show. I got a lot of enjoyment from watching it. I thought all of the main group of 5 girls, I thought that they were all really wonderful. The main girl, Bailey Madison, is the only one that I knew because I saw her in Just Go With It with Adam Sandler, which, his movies are pretty hit or miss for me, but I've always had a really soft spot for that one, and she was really good in that movie. And so she's the only one in the show that I actually already knew who she was. Everyone else was new, but especially all of the main girls, I thought that they were all really great. I thought that the acting was good and that they all had really fun chemistry with each other. And, I thought the mystery was well done for the most part. And it's just, I had a good time. I do have some problems with it, which we're going to get to. I will keep it spoiler free. I'm just going to keep things high level, just for those who haven't seen it. So I actually list those down to make sure that I didn't forget them, because if I didn't, normally I like to do reviews kind of unscripted and just talking, but there was a few things that I wanted to write down to make sure that I listed as specific things that I disliked. And so some of these are going to be actual events that happen, but I'm still going to keep them as vague as possible to keep them spoiler free. So I won't give any context or minimal amount of context to explain why this particular thing bothered me. But yeah, so we'll just jump into it. So one of the big ones is that apparently in whatever town that they're living in, there's one restaurant, because every time there's a discussion that happens over a restaurant, which a lot of movies and TVs will use to deliver exposition and things like that, is a pizza place. This one specific pizza place. And there's a point where one of the characters' moms ends up getting a job at that pizza place. Like it's like they either didn't have the budget for other restaurants, or they just didn't think it was that important. I don't know. It was so weird to me that I kept watching the show, and every time they wanted to go out and celebrate, or they needed to meet up and everyone needed to talk, it was at this pizza place. And it's like, dude, is there nowhere else you guys can go? Are there no other restaurants in town? Like it was just kind of weird. I just thought it was kind of funny that it was literally the only restaurant they ever go to. Actually, they might go to one time, but 99% of the meetups at a restaurant are at this one specific pizza place. And I just thought it was really strange. With a show like this, you're going to get some corny dialogue. It's going to happen. There were definitely some lines where it's like they would say it and you're just like, oh, okay, that was bad. Like it's with a show like this, that's going to happen. As an extension, there was some of the dialogue that felt like adults writing how they think that teenagers talk. And to be fair, the main group of girls are supposed to be in high school. I think they're all supposed to be about 16, and I'm in my late 20s, so maybe that is how kids talk these days, and I just, I'm not in that realm anymore. But there were some kind of Zoomer buzzwords that were used where I was just like, dude, teenagers really talk like that? Like that just seems, it seemed like old people trying to mimic how they think that teenagers talk. But maybe that is how teenagers talk. I don't know. I'm not in high school, haven't been in high school for a long time. The one other thing related to the dialogue, so there's kind of two. So one of them, so there's a character named Tabitha, and she works at a movie theater. And overall, I really liked her character. I thought the actress did a really great job. She had a lot of emotional scenes throughout the show, and I thought that her delivery was really great and everything. But her character works at the movie theater, and her character is the movie buff. So they're trying to, depending on how you want to look at it, either copy Scream or pay homage to Scream, because she not only does a lot of the, oh, well, in horror movies, this is what usually happens, so we should do this, but just throughout the movie, she was just throughout the show, she was constantly referencing movies, and it just got to be a little much, to the point where it's like, okay, we get it, she likes movies. I love movies, and even I don't reference movies that much in everyday conversation all the time. Like it felt like that's what they tried to make her personality was, oh, this is the movie girl, and so everything she talks about is going to be referencing movies, and it's just like, oh, okay, guys, like, just because she likes movies doesn't mean that literally she has to make a reference to a movie with every sentence out of her mouth. The last thing related to the dialogue that I thought was a little eye roll, that wasn't a sentence, but I don't care, was that almost all of the episodes try and end on a cliffhanger. So a character will reveal something, or they'll have a realization, and then the episode cuts to black, and then it's over. And so some of these were okay, but some of them I thought were just kind of dumb, especially because usually when that happens and it's done well, they draw it out a little bit before they cut to black. So the character will say something or have the realization or ask a question or whatever, and then the camera will kind of sit there on them for a second, and then it cuts to black. But there were a couple episodes here where they would say the thing immediately, cut to black, and it's like, well, okay, like give it a little time, And so it just, like I said, some of the episodes it was okay. I thought it worked, but there were definitely some episodes where it felt like they made it a point to have every episode end on a cliffhanger and cut to black, and there were some of them that I just thought were a little cringe, and were like, okay, really, guys? Like, was that necessary? Um, so, oh, there is one other thing related to the dialogue that I missed. So the other thing is that, and I should have written down some examples. I didn't write down any examples, but there were conversations where the dialogue felt disjointed in the sense that maybe they shot more. So a character would say something, and then there was more of a conversation, and then other character would reply. Excuse me, my nose is itching like crazy. I don't know what's going on. Um, and then maybe they decided for whatever reason that conversation in the middle didn't work, so they just cut it out. So this character says this, and then this character replies with that, and you're like, that's not really how someone would reply to a question like that, like it felt like it didn't quite mesh. The conversation wasn't exactly how people would reply to each other. So I don't know if there was something like that, or there was dialogue that was cut, or maybe that was just the best they could come up with. I don't know. And so that wasn't a big problem. It was pretty minor, but there were a couple times that I noticed where, yeah, a character would say something, character A would say something, character B would reply, and it didn't quite match up. So those were all of my problems relating to the dialogue. With a show like this, I feel like you kind of have to expect that. I actually found this show very reminiscent of the Scream TV show, which I actually also enjoyed. But I only watched the first 2 seasons because I did some reading about the 3rd season, and apparently it tried to basically redo the original Scream movie, but it was really bad. So I stopped after the first 2 seasons because those are basically completely detached from the Scream lore, if you want to call it that. It's its own story, but they try and use a lot of the satire and things that Scream does, and it had a lot of teenage drama because it also takes place during high school. But honestly, same kind of thing here, where I'm like, the mystery was enticing enough to me that I was entertained and interested for the whole show. So as an aside, if you liked the Scream TV show, you'll probably like this, or vice versa. If you watch this and like it, you'll probably like the Scream TV show. Next, and these are a couple just kind of minor things that happen throughout the show that, again, don't affect the overall show. They're just minor things that as I was watching, it was kind of like, oh, okay, that was kind of weird. There's a point where the girls want to go out and celebrate, which already is kind of strange because there's this killer that's after them, and they know that he's after them, and they know that he can basically see what they're doing at all times because they'll have a conversation or they'll do something, and then they'll all get a text from him referencing that thing that they just said or did. So he's watching them, but apparently they decide that, oh, hey, we want to go out and blow off some steam, so whatever. But they go to a bar, and it looks like the drinks that they have are alcoholic. So I don't know if it was a non-alcoholic bar and the show just didn't feel the need to point that out, or somehow they were able to get alcohol in a bar, but then the show just never addresses it. Like I said, they're all supposed to be about 16, and it never does any sort of like, oh, hey, we can use our fake IDs or whatever. I thought that was kind of like, okay, well, how do they get into... So it wasn't a bar, it was a club, because they went to go dancing, but they all had drinks that, like the martini glass with the flared out. And so it looked like they were drinking alcohol. And so I was just a little confused to be like, how does that work? And then there's a point where I'm still keeping it as vague as possible. But I guess you might be able to kind of consider this a very, very, very minor spoiler. But so they go to find A because they think they know where he is. And they're like, oh, well, we'll end this tonight and we're going to take care of it. And so they all just take big steak knives and go to attack him. And up until this point, you've seen the person. So he wears a mask. You don't know who it is, but he's a big guy. He's probably 6'4", 6'5". He's pretty broad shouldered. Do they really think that just because they all have knives, they're going to be able to take him down? Like, it was just... It struck me as very, very funny, just because if this was actually happening, it would be like, guys, this is the word. At least take a gun, you know. Like if you're gonna go hunt him down, at least take something other than a knife, you know. Like it was. I mean, even if they had swords, like that would be ridiculous. But that gives you a longer reach, and you might be able to do something with it versus a knife, where you're gonna have to get in right next to him to stab him. It just, you know, I just thought it was really funny. And then the last point that I had written down is that unfortunately it does the horror trope of multiple fake out nightmare scenarios where something's happening, you're like, whoa, holy crap, and then the character either wakes up from sleep or they were in the middle of a conversation and kind of, you know, spaced out, and then the other characters are like, hello, like where'd you go? You know, that's unfortunately that's a pretty common trope in horror movies and TV shows, and if it's done very, very minorly, I can live with it. I don't love it just because it's to the point where you'd have to find a really unique and creative way to use it nowadays in order for it to not be annoying. But because it's been beaten to death so much, most of the time it's used, you know, it doesn't work for me. So unfortunately, that gets done a couple times throughout this show, and by the time the last one happened, it's like, are you kidding? Another one? Like, come on! You don't need to constantly be doing this. So that was just some of those were more kind of broader across the whole show. Some of them were more specific events that I thought were kind of corny or cheesy or didn't really work. So, like I said at the very beginning, this is one of those shows where if you go in wanting to pick it apart and wanting it to be stupid, it will be. I don't know if anyone who sees this watches the pitch meetings on YouTube, but I love pitch meetings. And so if you're not familiar with those, it's a channel. Originally, it was a series done on Screen Rant, but it was so successful that he actually broke out and has an official channel for pitch meetings. But it's basically just making fun of movies, where it's the guy's name I believe is Ryan George, and he actually has his own YouTube channel too where he does other stuff. But he plays two characters, a writer who's pitching the movie and then the producer who's the one receiving the movie. And so it just, you know, it makes fun of either really bad movies or movies with really stupid ideas. And it's the one for Game of Thrones season 8 is so cathartic because it's like every major grievance that I have with that series is addressed in the pitch meeting. The one for Rise of Skywalker 2 is just terrific. Those are probably the top two that I would recommend if you want to check them out. But anyways, my point was that I feel like this show would make a terrific pitch meeting because there's so much dumb stuff in it. But it hooked me. I can't deny it. I was interested. I wanted to know what was going to happen. I found myself trying to figure out who A was, and oh, is it them? They've got this, and oh, could it be them? And they're doing this. And there at one point about halfway through, there was a direction I was really worried that they were going to go with who A was going to be. And I thought that if they had done that, that would have been really ridiculous because it would have been so stupidly obvious. So I'm really glad that they didn't go that way, because that is, you know, I know that the twist of who the killer is not the most important thing in a horror show, but if you make it too obvious, it does take out some of the I don't know, kind of like adrenaline of when you get to the finale and get to that big reveal. I did just remember one other point that I was going to write down and apparently didn't, so I can talk about that. And again, this, I guess you could consider this a minor spoiler, but there's no specifics. I'm not mentioning any specific names or whatever, but I thought that the actual finale conflict between the girls and A, that was over pretty quick. I was a little disappointed that it was just, and it's resolved. And then, of course, they have to sequel bait for another season because you can't have anything just be one and done these days. You have to always be expanding and doing more. So, unfortunately, they do sequel bait for another season. But depending on, I mean, I don't know where they could go because you do find out who A is. So the mystery of A would no longer be there. So a second season would either be oh, guess what? There's another mystery that happened, which would be really stupid, where, like the stereotypical, you think you know the story, but you actually don't, that kind of a thing that's just really corny and really dumb. Or they could do like, I don't know, just trying to finally capture A, but I feel like this series is kind of built on the mystery, and so I don't feel like that would really work. But who knows? Maybe they won't do another season, and they just wanted to sequel bait because they could. I don't know. But in a lot of ways, I actually felt like this was a fairly compelling slasher offering, despite all of the problems, especially with the dialogue. Um, I felt like they had a lot of really entertaining horror sequences, whether that's chase sequences or hide and seek between the killer and the girls. There was definitely some brutal murders in the show. Um, it's I felt like they did a good job for the most part of taking what works from slasher movies and applying it to a whole TV show rather than just copying it and putting in a half-hearted attempt and then calling it good. Um, as I mentioned before, if you liked the Scream TV show, I do think you'll like this, and vice versa. If you do like this, I would recommend the Scream TV show because I actually liked it a lot. All the drama aside, because there was a lot more drama, like high school teenage drama in the Scream TV show than there was here, and there was a decent amount here. But this show, one of the things I feel like it has over the Scream TV show is that it dealt with a lot heavier themes, and I liked that because there's, in a lot of movies nowadays, it feels like there's kind of a line of stuff that they're willing to address. And very occasionally, they'll put just a little bit over the line to kind of mention it, but they won't go into it. And while this show wasn't entirely based around it, I felt like I was happy to see that it addressed some of these darker, more serious themes, because it feels like a lot of just media nowadays isn't willing to go there. So I did like that too. But if this show is not for you, if any sort of, if any cringy dialogue at all puts you off, you're not going to like this. If you don't like any sort of high school teenage drama, you're not going to like this. It's those are the things you kind of have to put up with. But honestly, I enjoyed the show, and I have no problem recommending it. So, really excited for House of the Dragon episode 2 later tonight. I do have some family stuff, so I don't know if I'm going to get to record the review tonight or if I'm going to have to wait until tomorrow to record the review, but I'll definitely get that out as soon as I can. Really looking forward to seeing where that show is going. I really like the first episode, and it looks like a lot of the fan response was really positive too, so, that's always exciting. And it got reviewed for season 2. I did see that as well, so hopefully we'll get the whole story. I believe they said that they have 5 seasons planned out, so hopefully we get the whole show. But anyways, thanks for joining me, guys. Catch you guys later.